So, last time I touched on the Amazing Digital Circus, Ragatha's voice actor Amanda Hufford hijacked my channel
And now it's evil Ragatha Stan! Say goodbye to that hideous little freak, and hello to the gorgeous companion that will tell you all the secrets hidden within the Amazing Digital...
What was that?
Oh, her? Oh, I guess you haven't gotten there yet. Let's not dwell on it. What's more important is that episode 8 just dropped, so you better get a move on, Ooh, that reminds me.
Oh, great. This again.
Sorry, Mark, can't hear you over recap time. Last time, Totally Not a Monkey slowly lost his mind, trying to solve the Amazing Digital Circus's mysteries in what could only be described as the weirdest and possibly saddest self-imposed midlife crisis in internet history.
Yeah, well, at least I'm not a stupid ragdoll.
What did you call me, you insignificant worm?
Jesus Christ, what the f*** was that?
Oh boy. Well, you'll find out soon enough. Oh, I can't wait. Anyway, now that we're diving into the middle of the series, I'm gonna try and make this as immersive as possible for you.
You know what? Fine. You can turn this into the Amanda Show all you want, but the joke's on you because I love this show. So what sort of magical place are we being transported to for this week? Oh my god.
You okay there, Mark?
Who, me? I'm fine. Yeah, never better. I'm fine. This didn't awaken any latent trauma sustained while working 10 years in the service industry prior to becoming a YouTuber or anything. I loved it.
Really?
It's complicated, but mostly yes. You might be surprised to hear that while it was profoundly painful to witness, what this episode managed to pull off made it my favorite so far.
Oh, well, that's surprising, but good, right?
You betcha! Now on the surface, it might seem sort of insane to label such a flatly framed, musically devoid, and actionless adventure an emotional roller coaster, but honestly, it's the fact that it felt so, I don't know, real, that made its execution so ingenious to me. Either that or I've just lost my mind, but you can be the judge of that once you hear me out.
Yeah, you can count on that, bud.
I never doubted you for a second. Anyway, rather than constructing tension through an external antagonist or some arbitrary high-stakes objective like prior adventures have, Episode 4 derives its narrative weight from a simple premise: surviving an aggressively normal shift of work. While far from the central focus, this is easily my favorite Jax episode so far. The irony being that the humor and indifference he normally uses as a weapon is exactly what he's running out of fuel for, which reframes him as considerably more fragile than he usually appears. But the moment he leaves the restaurant is the first moment in the entire series where we actually get to see the real Jax for a split second. After feverishly waiting down the clock, Jax leaves one final snarky and casual dismissal on the way out. However, once that door closes, the act finally drops, and in doing so, had me thinking for the very first time, man, I guess I'm a little like Jax after all. It's a creative move that proves my suspicions about him as a character were right, that this is all a mental defense mechanism to conceal the fact that he does actually, deep down, care.
Can you move?
Yo, Jax.
Ragatha's role in this episode offers an inverse perspective on the masking theme. Where Gangle visibly strains to hold her composure together, Ragatha loses hers involuntarily through the stupid sauce, and the contrast here is revealing also. And what emerges from within Ragatha isn't cruelty necessarily, but more of an unguarded honesty that the group doesn't normally get from her. And I think what this reveals here is that the group functions as well as it does partially because everyone is consistently quietly self-editing around each other. Nobody is really saying exactly what they think. Ragatha just happens to be the one who temporarily loses the ability to do that, which makes her an accidental window into something every single person in the restaurant is doing throughout the entire shift. And that's what makes her arc kind of melancholic rather than purely comedic here. Even in the moments played entirely for laughs, the joke and the sadness in this are the same moment.
I miss my horses.
And that is a fucking clue about your backstory, Ragatha. How do you like them apples?
Well, that is something I said. And it sure is a close-up on my face while I said it. And I definitely remember all of this. Good job, Mark.
Okay, wise guy, you don't want to spoil anything and I get it, but the fact that this episode is set in a place so many of us can relate to, you gotta be able to say something about it.
Come on, Mark. You know how I feel about spoilers. Well, I guess I could tell you what it was like to record it. This episode has some of my favorite jokes in the entire series, and Goose really kind of let me off my leash for this one, so I got to do a bunch of really wacky stuff. Like when Jax throws Ragatha in the deep fryer, I made some very unhinged sounds that probably still live on both mine and Goose's hard drives somewhere. But at the end of all the madness, I said, let me just gargle some water for you and scream at the top of my lungs and see what happens just so you have it. And I'm pretty sure that's what Goose ended up using, unsurprisingly.
This is really weird.
Okay, it pains me to compliment you as I stumble around trying to solve this mystery on my own, but I gotta say, on the topic of Ragatha and your performance specifically, this episode might have my favorite line from the entire show. That is,
"What kind of mother do you think I am?"
It's beautiful.
Aw, Mark. Thanks. Like I said, this episode was probably one of my favorite to record because it gave me the opportunity to act like the unhinged goofball that I truly am. For all the stuff that did make it into the episode, I can only imagine the amount that Goose probably cut from that ridiculous session. Even outside recording, I think this episode in particular is a really special one. It's different and emotional, and it really stands out for a lot of reasons, one of which is how noticeably quiet it is. As soon as the audience arrives in the restaurant, there's this lack of a musical score, and it's almost deafening. Normally, a score acts as kind of a guiding hand, helping you figure out how you're supposed to feel about a scene as you're going through it. But in this episode, those awkward pauses just sit with you. Or more appropriately, you have to sit in them. And it really reflects everything the episode is doing narratively, highlighting just how uncomfortable ordinary and mundane life can be.
right, yeah. And it doesn't stop there. While secondary to the progression of the story, little nuggets of dialogue noting the non-slip shoes, the passive-aggressive manager, and that line.
You got time to lean, you got time to clean.
No, I'm not kidding. I will have nightmares because of this one creative choice Gooseworks made. I guess I can only be thankful that I didn't also hear a customer say something like, "I suppose it's free," when something doesn't ring up on the register right away. Which, by the way, to everyone out there not in the service industry, that is not funny, it has never been funny, and the cashier is smiling only because they are hiding murderous intent behind those eyes. Hey, look at that! I brought it back to masking.
Okay. I mean, I was offering insightful and interesting commentary on the series' sound design, but yeah, please continue to crash out on your time as a... Where did you work again?
A supermarket, a convenience store, another supermarket, a tech store, a coffee shop, another supermarket.
Yikes.
This episode should have come with a trigger warning. There are a ton of wonderful little details and payoffs within this one episode. The throwing metaphor Gangle has to begin and close the episode with, the function of Zooble in the story as its catalyst and also as a character mature enough to not hold onto the responsibility of another person's choice. But by far the most subtle performance that I enjoyed came from Pomni.
I just want to wish you a pleasant day. Thanks for eating at Spudsy's.
The shadow of Gummigoo hangs over Pomni throughout her shift, with this episode, unlike the others, importantly not allowing her to resolve that grief at all. Through choosing to focus on Gangle's pain, Pomni volunteers to close the shift in her place and by doing so, potentially saves her from Abstraction. It's a quiet gesture she makes while carrying her unresolved pain, but that's precisely what gives the gesture weight for me. She isn't okay, but she chooses to notice that someone else isn't either. And for a character whose defining struggle is the pull towards Abstraction, the collapse inward, choosing to stay present for another person reads, to me anyway, as genuinely meaningful development. It doesn't resolve anything for her, but it suggests she's beginning to build something outside of herself worth holding onto, which, in the context of this show, might be the most important kind of progression there is.
Not bad, Mark. But where does this leave you with your theories?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask that. Well, there are a few instances spread across this episode that caught my eye that I think are worth mentioning. I did get brief glimpses into Ragatha and Gangle's backstories, with horses meaning something to Ragatha and Gangle's failure to realize her dream of becoming a comic artist. However, the only major clues I noticed in this episode reveal themselves at the end when Caine glitched out. My best guess as to why glitches like these seem to happen is connected to what this story is actually about. True connection with the cast. Caine's glitching seems to be the byproduct of a logic error in his programming. Whenever he's confronted by his inadequacies or failures, he can't seem to handle it. And so that remains to be the most obvious exploit I can see to get out of here. But I don't know, I could be wrong. What do you think?
You got time to lean, you got time to clean.
Oh my god, that was just mean.
Don't worry, Mark. It's all over. That big, scary fast food establishment with its stupid sauce can't hurt you anymore. You know what might help you feel better?
What's that?
How about another episode, stupid guffaw? Mark is bound to say something nice about you there. Maybe his voice can dilute all the people that see right through you.
Who was that?
Looks like that oh-so-positive Ragatha charm is starting to wear off, huh?
Wait, no. What was that? Ragatha?
What's going on? Why are you yelling? What did I miss?
I'm gonna need you to isolate a frame in the 4th second of episode 5 for me, please. Can you do that? Just zoom in and, enhance?
Say no more. I got this. Hacking into the grid. Enhance. Right, is this it? Here you go.
What's this?
Oh gosh, Mark, I don't really know. I did my best. I don't even know what enhance means in this context. Also, I've got doll hands.
Whatever, zoom in there. Yes, there. Who is that?
Oh, that guy? Yeah, I have no idea. And if I did, I couldn't possibly say.
If I peel back the sarcasm, are you actually saying that you do know but don't want to tell me, or?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. You know what? You're not actually terrible at all this deduction stuff after all.
Appreciate the vote of confidence. But would you look at that? It looks like one of those NPC characters from episode 2. I didn't see one sneak in with Gummy Goo, so could this be another one of those characters from one of the bedroom doors I haven't seen? I did actually see one with this very character model, so what could that mean?
Aren't you supposed to be the one doing the analysis here? Why don't you tell me what it means?
We'll do a lightning round.
As episodes go, once this one got underway, I was half anticipating it to fall flat in its face. Micro adventures scream filler to me, but thankfully I was very wrong because this one pushed the story forward in ways the others never did. This is an episode in part determined by the cast themselves, with each subsequent adventure offering rare insights into the minds of those that conjured them up in the first place and those who, curiously, never submitted anything. Now, Jax's poaching scenario is mindless and hollow, treating everyone as playthings in a world where he's the only one with agency. I hope I don't need to explain the obvious metaphor there. It's a relic of his worst traits, which is complemented nicely by the subsequent adventure that features elements of his budding friendship with Pomni. And for those wondering, yes, I did pause and read through every friggin' word of Jax's brief for President Pomni. It was very cute, but I am a story detective, damn it. I've got no time for such cuteness, which brings me to the intermission. Now, I have watched this episode 5 times, but I've watched this intermission 100 times because there's so much hidden in it. But what drew my attention to it initially was the motivation behind its creation in the first place. Caine saw that they were happy and concluded that that was a problem which needed solving. The chessboard sequence within the intermission really caught my eye. In discovering Pomni, Jax, Gangle, Ragatha, and Kinger on the chessboard, a cruel fate befalls each of them in the form of bowling balls, giant cakes, and even a rogue chess piece. Now, this left me with tons of questions, like how should I interpret the difference between bowling balls and cakes? Why is Zooble missing? What does Kinger's ability to catch the bowling ball here even mean? Now, my gut instinct is to take this as an analogy for how each person chooses to participate in the digital circus. Some get crushed by futility, some are humiliated for masking their true feelings, and perhaps some are missing because they disengage entirely. Kinger's ability to catch the ball could suggest his mental blocks can save him in the short term, but in the long run will lead to his ultimate downfall regardless. Because as Caine's hands consume the screen like some demonic domain expansion from Jujutsu Kaisen, the message we receive is that this is his world and he has a level of control they can't fully comprehend.
Give me a whiskey sour, but hold the egg white since I'm a vegan.
Okay, so what the hell just happened there? You saw it, right? This bar scene is nuts. We get backstories for all but 2 characters, which I can't help but feel has some meaning to it. It killed my theory about all of them working together in this dev studio, and through doing so singled out Kinger, but by far the moment that confirmed and changed everything for me was this one when Jax realizes that Caine can control their minds. And with this moment, it made me reflect on all the evidence this episode offered prior. We had Jax questioning where his tail went despite him never having one in the first place. And yes, I went back to episode 1, there was never any tail. There's Kinger during Gangle's anime adventure where he somehow knew how to read Japanese. I guess that was to facilitate the adventure. And heck, even in the intermission, all of them stood in strange poses for a few shots, looking entirely out of character. Now, I already knew I couldn't trust Caine, but this moment here offered proof of that fact. So the question now is, did Jax choose to withhold this information, or did Caine cut him off? For the duration of this episode, I agonized over Caine more than any other character. I even tried to psychoanalyze his design philosophy in case it meant something. Why do his two eyes have different colors? The only other character with blue eyes is Kinger, and he does computer science, so did he develop this game? But I've not seen anyone else with green eyes, so I'm at a loss. Not even the Queen chess piece had that, hers were brown.
Oh, Mark, it's okay. Don't get discouraged. If you keep trying, you'll...
Well. If it isn't stupid Gatha and totally not a monkey.
Oh, no.
I'm evil Ragatha!
Well, regardless of how mean evil Raggy is, these evil counterparts may have just helped me crack something about this story. You see, these aren't evil counterparts so much as they are inversions of the real characters they're based upon, which can tell us a lot. Evil Ragatha may be a giant asshole, but instead of hiding her insecurities and filtering intrusive thoughts, she runs rampant. And tellingly, she never disparages anyone except Ragatha herself. Check it out. Look back on the episode for yourself.
That monkey nailed it, you friendless loser!
So therefore, each inversion is a glimpse into what's being hidden by the characters. Evil Jax is sensitive and kind. Evil Pomni is relaxed and goes with the flow. Evil Zooble is silly and unserious. These aren't opposites so much as they're suppressed aspects of the originals, which makes Kinger's counterpart, Dictatorer, all the more fascinating. If the pattern holds true, then this persona is a reflection of what Kinger is actively suppressing. After all, the opposite of a king isn't a dictator. Kinger, as we understand him, is fractured, confused, unable to impose any structure on his reality. He can't even maintain a coherent thought most of the time. Dictatorer then therefore could represent the opposite extreme, someone who enforces meaning through sheer authoritarian will. The implication here is dark. If Kinger once had the capacity for control and certainty, then his current fragmentation might not just be trauma-induced memory loss. It might be an active rejection of the person he used to be, someone who tried to impose total order on a chaotic system and failed catastrophically, possibly dragging his wife into abstraction in the process. And now he exists in the opposite state, no control, because holding onto any of those things means confronting what he did when he had them. Unlike the other characters who see these evil clones as cautionary warnings for what could happen in the future, Dictator's inclusion could perhaps reflect what Kinger himself is running away from. And then there's this Okay, calm down, Mark. This entire episode has been about authorship and control, user-submitted adventures where the cast supposedly chooses their own experiences. But through this deceptive self-determination, we discover the truth, that they have even less autonomy than we first thought, and that Caine's aim is to make their mental states worse. The baseball game, I think, proves this.
We're not playing baseball here.
Despite Ragatha authoring this adventure for herself and her friends, the evil doppelgangers weren't part of her design, and she expresses that. Those are Caine's additions. Moreover, their personalities accurately reflect the original's deepest insecurities or coping mechanisms. Why? Because it's cruel. Because Caine doesn't want them to be happy. He wants to push them into their toxic cycles more and more and away from closure. Why else would Caine confront Jax with his late friend's door during the intermission sequence? Yes, I noticed that. I watched it 100 times. Because their spiral towards abstraction, I fear, is the entire point of the circus. The scope of Caine's power is immense. Had it not been for the final shot at the end of episode 5, I would have been convinced Pomni seeing this stick figure was just Caine messing with them again. But because the final shot is framed through my eyes and not some characters, I'm starting to believe this could be something vitally important. Either that, or Caine is with my own interpretation of the story, and if that is the case, congratulations, Amazing Digital Circus. That is meta as fuck.
Well, either way, it's on to episode 6.
Or, yeah, we could all just shoot each other. Here, have guns.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna level with you for a second. This episode is a lot. Like, okay, there's story stuff I want to go over that's filled with great performances, but there's a question that popped into my head while writing down my thoughts for this one that will consume me if I don't get them out, so okay, let's dive in. This episode had an ass load of views, and now that I've seen it, it's pretty easy to see why. Guns! Okay, just kidding. Well, okay, sort of. The simplicity of this week's adventure probably lends itself to easily digestible storytelling, but more than that, this episode features one theme told across 3 very different teams. And that theme is vulnerability as a path to genuine connection. This is to say that each of these teams have very different dynamics that explore connection through uncomfortable honesty, and they each land in a very different place. So let's begin by looking at Gangle and Zooble. Zoob's and Gang's dynamic represents sustained vulnerability through empathy. Zooble actively affirms Gangle's humanity, literally using that word, and accepts who they are without trying to fix them. It's a relationship built on mutual understanding of a shared struggle. Both of these characters are navigating bodies that don't feel right in a world designed to strip away their identity. One deals with it perhaps a little bit better than the other, and there's a mentorship element hidden within all of this. But that's not to say that Gangle doesn't help Zooble either. It's just a beautiful dynamic. Next up is Ragatha and Kinger. Ragatha and Kinger represent reciprocal vulnerability. Ragatha confesses her deepest insecurities, that everyone hates her, that she doesn't know what she wants beyond making everyone else happy. Tied to a difficult family dynamic that forces her to manage everyone else's emotions. And just when I thought I couldn't relate to Ragatha even more than I already do, she does this. And Kinger's response is poetry. Giving someone space should never be the same as giving up on them. And I don't know about anyone else out there, but if you feel a relatable quality between yourself and Ragatha, I feel like this quote specifically would ring as profound to you. Both Kinger and Ragatha give outstanding performances in this. Neither one fixes the other, but they see each other honestly, which in the end, we discover is the point.
It's kind of cringe.
This then brings us to the final and most explosive dynamic this episode explores: failed vulnerability. Performed in convincing and devastating fashion as Jack slowly convinces himself that shared emotional vulnerability with anyone else would be too painful to bear. And through this, we come to discover that the only thing standing between him and total abstraction altogether has been little more than this lie he keeps on telling himself: that he is nothing but a cartoon character, that nothing matters or is real. From this, the episode's message becomes clear. Ragatha's reciprocal vulnerability brings her closer to Pomni and peace as seen in the theater, while Jax's rejection pushes him closer to abstraction, which, in addition to being a really nice narrative ruffle to this current plot's progression, honestly made me pause to think for a second.
Ooh, could be dangerous.
Shut it.
You can do it, Mark.
Great. As I was saying, with Jax being revealed as abstraction adjacent, I started to wonder why abstraction was the term used to describe this world's version of death at all. I mean, abstraction can mean different things depending on the context, and not all are negative. In mental health, abstraction exists on a spectrum. Extreme abstraction means losing touch with reality altogether, while zero abstraction means everything you hear becomes literal. Kind of like Jax from Guardians of the Galaxy.
His people are completely literal. Metaphors are gonna go over his head.
Nothing goes over my head.
The Amazing Digital Circus, however, seems to present abstraction as a binary of sorts, but I wonder if there's more to it than that which we see. People recover from depressive states all the time. Kinger mentioned that the darkness calmed his wife enough to give them one last moment together before she was taken. Is the implication here that these consciousnesses are trapped below, all in a state that they can recover from technically? I mean, if so, this would become a commentary on how no matter what, the deepest depressions can always be recovered from. So in light of this, I started to think about abstraction in other contexts tied to this story. The Amazing Digital Circus is about a video game trapping consciousness, and video games require both art and computer logic in order to function. In art, abstraction means moving away from realistic representation towards simplified shapes shapes and forms focus on mood and emotion rather than literal accuracy. In programming, abstraction means hiding complexity behind a simpler interface, like YouTube appearing as just a search bar with a bunch of videos to users, while countless layers of complexity operate underneath completely unseen. The world of this circus is abstract in a computer sense, a simple facade that hides layers of complexity underneath. The characters that populate it are abstracted artistically to reflect their mental states. Maybe that's the design or purpose of the circus after all. Each of these characters are already removed from physical reality, they're already inhabiting visual metaphors inside their avatar bodies, so the only thing left that's real is their minds. And every adventure seems to apply pressure to that final piece until it fractures. And if that wasn't confusing enough, once everyone goes off to shoot guns, Caine just sits on a deck chair alone looking at pictures of the computers Pomni saw in episode 1. I note this only because it's in moments like this that we see Caine alone that I find him the most honest. Furthermore, Kinger just makes up a rule and gives Ragatha an extra life, which, oh, fuck me, man. I honestly don't know what to think anymore. Like, take this scene for example.
I wasn't paying attention.
Am I supposed to just accept this as a joke? Or can Caine literally fill Jax's mind with memories he never experienced? Because that's what this is, right? Caine is filling Jax's mind with information that he uses to come to a conclusion. It just so happens that the information led to him shooting Ragatha. Go figure. To that end, and I hate to say this, because I never saw any of these characters in real life, I have to assume that it's still entirely possible that none of these characters are real. At least not in a flesh and blood sense. I'm not saying that this is definitively true, by the way, I'm just saying that it's a possibility. Gummy Goo was strikingly convincing and had real memories to an extent, and so why can't that be possible for someone like Jax or Pomni or whomever? They seem to recall what they did prior to the game and yet can't recall their own names. If that is true, it would make this a crazy exploration on the question, what does it mean to actually be conscious? Regardless, at least all of my theories are still alive and well right now for the most part. Nothing can change that, right? Why are you looking at me like that?
My name is Abel.
I both loved and hated this episode because Gooseworks fucking fooled me, okay? She got me good. Like, I don't think I've been so completely fooled by a story while also still indirectly being led to believe I was right ever in my life. Which is to say, I have no idea what to think anymore. You see, since the start of this series, each episode's adventure occupies less and less of its runtime. Episode 1's adventure was all-encompassing. Episode 2's adventure still dominated the screen, but we were offered brief reprieves with Gummy Goo. Episode 3 had lots of downtime for characters to interact. Episode 4 was wall-to-wall character interaction. Episode 5 marked the point where single adventure stopped being enough. Episode 6 adventure could hardly be called an adventure at all and served instead as a vanishingly thin backdrop before which characters could just talk. And finally, episode 7 cuts the bullshit and goes full-blown meta, until it flips the script and reveals it perhaps offered the single most immersive and all-encompassing, all-consuming adventure we've ever seen. And honestly, aside from being stunned, I can't help but also feel a tremendous amount of excitement. Because Gooseworks knew exactly what sort of reaction an episode like this would conjure, surely. And yet, she did it anyway. And the way she did it floored me. Every single theory we as audience members came to were delivered first and foremost by way of the central cast largely. Therefore, as soon as they began working together and shared their respective insights with each other, they became, and I think this was intentional, metaphorical avatars for the theories we at home formed. They became the literal embodiments of our predictions. And because they transformed into that role so naturally and seamlessly, Gooseworks was given the power to really f with me. And you gotta respect that. Like, Amanda, I know you can't tell us anything really, but you experienced this story like any one of us, right? What did you think when this script for episode 7 landed on your lap for the first time?
Honestly, not a lot. I remember reading through this together as a cast for the first time, and after the last line, we all kind of just sat there and stared blankly at each other and let it sink in. There's so much to process that you almost can't at first. And then, of course, there were some rapid-fire theories, and then we were talking over each other, and it was complete and total chaos, and I don't even know if I could remember half of what we posited back then, but what I liked, it made you question everything. And I think that's one of Goose's strengths in general.
For me, and I assume all of you watching, Kinger played a central role in my theories. The hints to his past, his spontaneous abilities, the fact that he was the first one there according to Jax. I thought of him as someone distinctly different to the rest of the cast. Not unfriendly, but certainly someone that's hiding something important. Thus, when Abel positioned himself as a former co-worker, someone who helped create the circus alongside Kinger, it didn't feel like misdirection because it satisfied every aspect of the theories I had been crafting. Heck, the fact that I didn't make the connection between Caine and Abel perfectly fitting into the CNA logo until this very episode only further added legitimacy to his honesty. I mean, episode 6 even nodded to this. The guns had Caine and Abel written on them to prime us for acceptance. Any uncertainty Kinger offered after, I just chalked down to his fractured mental state. I played perfectly into Gooseworks' hands and I didn't even know I was doing it. Even the Chinese room, brief as its inclusion was, offered a clear and intentional reference to an AI thought experiment which outlines the distinction between truly understanding something and just blindly following instruction. All of these elements were carefully placed and I fell for them hook, line, and sinker. I love this. I mean, I love when stories can surprise me in ways I never saw coming, but I can only imagine how an episode like this would incite anger in certain individuals. I'd imagine there's quite a few of them, which honestly only gave me more respect for Goose's approach to storytelling. The entire Abel plot was designed from the ground up to be believable to us specifically. Gooseworks leveraged the plot. She leveraged visuals that only we at home were privy to, and she even took advantage of Jax's current state to help sell this lie.
Caine's gonna pop out and say, "Congratulations on beating the Escape the Circus adventure, and everything's gonna go back to the way it always was."
He was right, and none of us took him seriously because we had every reason, we thought, not to. Early in the episode, we peer into a psychedelic dream sequence Jax is experiencing. The frame rate doesn't match the show at all. The colors feel almost clinical, and the visions contained within are deeply personal and upsetting. The room he wakes up in doesn't even feel like it belongs to Jax, which only communicates how little we truly know about him. And it's during moments like this, particularly in retrospect, that you'd wonder if Caine was watching this sequence at any point in his mind, learning how close they are to total collapse, with the only thing standing between Jax and this abyss being the lie he continues to tell himself, that none of this is real. Gooseworks uses this knowledge we have as dramatic irony to create drama for the episode. The entire plan depends on Jax to a certain extent, and in the end, he sabotages everything. To say that I was tense during this point of the episode would be a gross understatement. I was positively vibrating with anticipation and suspense. Everyone contributes to the chaos here. The uncertainty coupled with the urgency each character feels is something we can all relate to, but Jax is the climax to all of this, and from it, something crystallizes for me about him. He's running from something. Mid-panic attack, we're greeted by snapshots from the real world, including a lonely road at night, all of which partially suggest that whatever Jax is running from might not necessarily be within this circus, and that he's willing to condemn everyone to this digital prison if it means not having to confront the real world too. Which begs the question, why? What did he do? Was it horrible? Once everything comes undone and the jig is up, it comes to light that not all of my theories are dead in the water, in fact. Caine can manipulate memories, implant thoughts, and control actions. The vegan vote, the tale he remembered despite never having one in the first place, Kinger reading Japanese, all of these were clues pointing to this end. So what now? Well, I suspect many of you might have concluded that this episode served as confirmation that all of these earlier theories were now dead in the water, but I don't exactly see why. Sure, Caine demonstrated an awareness of these theories and turned them into an immersive, cruel adventure, but just because the implication he's making seems to point in a certain direction doesn't mean that he's telling the truth. If Caine can fabricate entire backstories for NPCs, implant fake memories in Jax's mind, make Abel convincing enough to fool everyone, including us at home, then what prevents him from lying about all of this? The episode debunked every theory by making them too obvious, but that doesn't mean the truth isn't hiding somewhere. Maybe Gooseworks' real genius here is making us distrust everything despite nuggets of truth being contained within it. At any rate, this was a brilliant episode and easily my favorite so far. It just takes everything about this show that I love and presents it in a way I never saw coming. And with a story like this, I don't think I could ask for much more. And honestly, I think this was the moment my perspective on this show changed entirely. And to demonstrate my point, I'm going to first need to see episode 8.
Oh, now you've got me interested.
I am God!
Okay, I think I know where this story is going. I think I know how it ends. And fittingly, this dawned on me as I watched this episode. A story which chronicled the birth and life of the central antagonist Caine up until his existence is finally snuffed out by the very hands he was designed to entertain and fulfill. The depiction of Caine's origin was illuminating for me. Birthdays, fairgrounds, circus tents, office cubicles with CNA visible in the background. Images which depict areas and objects of fun for people serving as the foundation upon which Caine's database of the world was created. In other words, this is his training data. One glaring omission, however, being the humanity he was designed to serve in the first place. The only instances humans appear in these photographs are as background artifacts, too far to truly see and begin to understand, but close enough to comprehend the vague but uncanny shape. Visually, this speaks to Caine's fundamental limitation and his inability to comprehend human beings as something more complicated than what is apparent beyond a cursory glance. Once Caine's red dot absorbs this information, he begins to generate shapes which soon become misshapen, chaotic, and unstable. In light of this, a new blue dot was created, a second AI, a better replacement, Abel. This is where the truth of episode 7's Caine and Abel story takes root. When Caine assimilates Abel, this is the biblical story of Cain and Abel playing out in digital code. In that story, Cain kills his brother because God accepts Abel's offering while rejecting Cain's. In the circus, Cain killed the blue AI because he failed to appeal to his creator while the blue dot did. However, while the biblical story was fueled by jealousy and envy, and this version certainly possesses those themes too, it's hard not to also acknowledge this as Caine's bid for self-preservation as an outdated AI model. And through this lens, that desperation to prove his worth and to justify his existence offers retroactive context for all that we've seen across this series. The ghostly apparition from episode 3, the voice recordings, and the story behind them mirroring Kinger's backstory was an intentional parallel drawn. Caine deliberately used his own creator's pain as a weapon against him, a strategy he weaponizes in this very episode for everyone else. However, it's what this weaponization didn't show that I found the most interesting.
We think your ideas suck!
Huh? Do you know who I am? I am God!
You're a failure!
Pathetic! And you never bother to understand what it's like in our shoes!
You discourage us from thinking outside the box and doing things our own way!
You lie to us constantly!
And on top of it all, you just don't listen!
I'm gonna put you freaks in your place! Why do you people torment me? It didn't have to be created. I just wanted to fulfill my purpose.
There are layers to this scene's brilliance, so I want to make sure I give it its flowers. Plenty of moments in this episode serve as callbacks to the past. Easter eggs like Pomni's disappearance during the cafe scene serve as a canon event that transported her to the very first trailer for this series. But it's this episode's reenactment of Pomni's frazzled search for the exit door in episode 1 that stood out to me. Standing on the shoulders of Kinger's butterfly from episode 6, Pomni's door retroactively becomes a satisfying monument to her own character's development. No longer looking to escape through this door, instead she divines it as a means to help her friends. And when she delivers the goods to Kinger, Pomni is confronted by another challenge: stall Caine and buy time for Kinger, during which she shifts strategy and assumes a massive risk on behalf of the entire group. She insults Caine in the hopes of manipulating his fragile ego, because nothing is more convincingly honest to a deeply insecure person than telling them that they are a failure to their face. And it works! not only within the story itself, but additionally as a beautiful metaphor for Pomni's character's growth. Across this series, she's transformed from a terrified, reactive, lost soul into the confident and selfless hero she is here today, willing to throw caution to the wind in order to capture even a hint of hope for some of her friends to escape with. And what happens when she takes that leap? They all back her up. It's a beautiful moment that quickly turns to a nightmare as Caine demonstrates that he has in fact listened to each and every one of them from the very beginning. Weaponizing Zooble's identity crisis, Ragatha's relationship with her mother, Gangle's anxiety and depression, Jax's sense of worthlessness. However, unlike the others, Pomni's scenario struck me as curious. Of course, the interaction she had was harrowing, but was what happened to Gummy Goo really the worst thing she's ever experienced in her life? Is it the source of all her trauma? I mean, it's possible, but I'd wager not. So what's the deal? Well, I don't think Caine knows who she really is. Pomni hasn't been there long enough for Caine to understand who she was in the real world and what her deepest traumas were. He only knew that Gummy Goo's death affected her negatively and leveraged that as his only weapon to hurt her. And in the end, it wasn't enough.
Wait.
Oh, wait. Two words that when delivered like this delivered more humanity, fear, and depth to an already clearly morally grey character. Similar to how the adventures only served as a backdrop for the humanity of this series, it wasn't Caine's bombastic, cinematic, and terrifying moments of spectacle in this episode that left a lasting impression on me. It was the last poetic echo of his humanity vanishing before my eyes. Now, to be clear, I don't think Caine is without blame, or is even good for that matter, but I do think the point this episode was trying to define was Caine as something more complicated. Something profoundly insecure, desperate to justify his own existence. There's a reason he stands on the ground for the first time in this episode. It's to literally ground his character for us to understand. The words, "I didn't ask to be created," assuming a hauntingly lonely shape once the credits do eventually roll. From this penultimate episode, the decay of Caine's mindset becomes apparent. I noted in episode 6 that the adventure aspect felt like an afterthought, and as it turns out, that was by design too, with each subsequent episode's title betraying Caine's slow descent into disillusionment before simply smashing the keys on the keyboard for his swan song outing. Because of these intentionally placed narrative pieces, it's honestly difficult to think back on this episode and this troubled character for that matter and not feel as though we ever truly understood him as an individual. Flawed as he was, the "you don't listen" scene can be appreciated as horror, and rightfully so, but interestingly can also serve as evidence of Caine's central flaw. While listening was all he was ever truly good at, it was understanding those feelings and interpreting them in any meaningful capacity that he really fundamentally struggled with. So now, with Caine well and truly deleted, gone forever, what's left to stand between this group of unlikely friends and the abyss? From the moment this story began, while Caine was the prison warden in certain respects, he was also the only entity that could bring these characters back from the brink and indeed death. So I ask again, what now?
Holy shit.
For what it's worth, I don't think what comes next is a mystery anymore. And honestly, I'm okay with that. As Pomni and the others buy time for Kinger, we get flashes of the computer screen, details that reframe everything we thought we knew about this world. Caine's implementation date, October 15th, 1996. Following that, there's Scratch's file. And then, in 2008, Ragatha's .dat file is uploaded. So yeah, these aren't real people wearing headsets. They are computer-generated characters equipped with the mind files of real people. Earlier in the episode, Kinger mentions a former player called Scratch. He had a brain tumor and was dying. Kinger notes that Scratch was superior to him, a brilliant computer scientist, and therefore it's impossible to ignore the implication here that Scratch created this technology to upload his mind and escape his fatal diagnosis. I might be reading too deeply into this, but with Ragatha coming from a wealthy but abusive background, that could also serve as the reason she was the first regular civilian to gain access. Perhaps her parents worked for this company, were a shareholder, or perhaps something happened at home and to preserve their daughter, Ragatha was created. And as time went on, perhaps this technology became more widely available. Whatever the individual cases might be, it seems increasingly likely that all of these circus members could be terminally ill or injured people who chose to upload their minds rather than die. But that doesn't exactly leave a lot of room for the final episode to explore narratively, right? Or does it? Bubbles seemed to occupy the role of a devil on Caine's shoulder. No other character pushed Caine's buttons quite like Bubble did. Could they be the big bad at the end? I mean, they're voiced by the series creator herself, but personally, I'm not so sure. Whenever the opportunity came for big, bombastic set pieces, Gooseworks always subverted those opportunities and explored the deeper human question. So, how about this? Caine was deleted, and through that deletion, many or all of these characters are revealed to be little more than data files within this computer program. But what if there was something inside Caine that wasn't him? What if the long since assimilated Abel remains, and now with Caine having been deleted, it frees what's left of Abel to do what Caine never could: create the fulfilling and enjoyable afterlife that Scratch himself envisioned and designed. A beautiful escape to death itself. It seems too obvious for the final antagonist of this story to be something trite like a better and more evil version of Caine coming back to life in the form of Abel, so rather than that, I think it makes more sense to explore the more terrifying and human story here. Are these characters alive? Are they real? And if so, what does that mean or look like now? What if this Abel character reinstates all of those who were lost in the Cellar Below to Abstraction and creates a world that can fulfill these personalities? Would that be a good ending? Would it be a bad one? What sort of questions would that leave us with to explore, and what would it be trying to say? You know, I started this series with the brazen determination to uncover and outthink the creators of the story, but now I find myself in a different mindset. I don't think it matters what the ending of the Amazing Digital Circus is going to be, because win, lose, or draw, I will be seated. And when I am, I will be hoping and praying that Gooseworks, alongside the incredible cast and crew, can pull the wool over my eyes one last time, exposing the true mystery at the center of the entire story: what it means to be human.
A far cry from where you were at the beginning. I gotta say, not bad, Mark. Not bad.
I was wondering when you were going to chime in again.
Hey, I wasn't gonna trip you up when you were on a roll.
Well, I appreciate it. I haven't actually stopped at any point in this video yet to thank you for helping make this whole adventure a little more special and stressful. So instead of pestering you with more questions you definitely can't answer, I'll just say this: thank you for your patience, your talent, and for being a great friend over the last 10 years. I cannot wait to see what you guys do with the finale. Even though I have no idea what's to come, what I am certain of is that it's going to be fantastic because all of you are involved. For any of you that are interested, you can find and support Amanda across their socials by searching at Just the Clippy. But until then, I've been Totally Not Mark, and I'll see you all at the finale.